Matthew chapter 22 and verse 35. Then one of them, which was a lawyer, asked him a question, tempting him, saying, Master, which is the great commandment in the law? Yahweh Shai said unto them, Thou shalt love Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shai, thy God, with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the greatest commandment. First and foremost, I take about praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shai. I want to give double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone that do rule well. Salutation to the men of the hopeful and sincere elect. This is your brother Marcus out in Trinidad. Just want to do a little edification for the elect's sake. And the name of this lesson would be, if you truly love the Lord, you won't be afraid. If you truly love the Lord, you won't be afraid. All right. And basically, we are about to enter into the time of Jacob's trouble, where just like we in the diplomatic stages of World War III, it ain't gone full blown yet. You could safely say we also in Jacob's trouble, because trouble started, it just ain't gone full scale yet either. All right. So right now, as the scriptures talk about the trial of your faith, right now is the what we doing by going out and pushing this truth, going out on the highways and byways, is an act of love. But the test of love coming in the time of Jacob's trouble, where brothers might be in concentration camps, brothers might be unable to eat, they might be faced with taking the micro C hip. All right, all the things that comprise of and will take place during the time of Jacob's trouble, all right, that is going to test the love that you have for Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai. And as the title says, if you truly love the Lord, you won't be afraid. All right. So, the inspiration for this lesson, it came from an incident that took place with me, a couple years ago. When I said couple, I mean like probably over 20 years ago, almost 30 years ago. I could have been like between either 9 or 10 years old. All right. And what had happened, my grandfather, he's in the spirit world now, but at that time he used to go, as we say in the Caribbean here, he used to go on the land, and it's like a little forested area in the hills where he would plant crops. All right, so it's like in the forest, so to speak. All right, and you would have a little clearing where they would clear the land and they would plant their crops. All right, to carry the sheep, carry the goats to graze and whatnot. And usually when he would be home by sunset. All right, by the time the sun is setting, he already home. And there was this one particular day, particular evening, that that he didn't come home on time, and rain was falling, and I think it could have been probably after 7. It was dark at this point now. All right. And it could have been after 7, probably heading to 8, and rain was falling and he wasn't home yet. So naturally my grandmother started to get worried. I don't know if she was worried if he was hurt or if he was by another woman. I don't know. How women think. But, I worried that something might have happened to him. Now, mind you, 9 or 10 years old me was terrified of the dark. Anything that moved funny in the dark, that was problem. That was hysteria. I wasn't playing with that. I wasn't playing with the dark. In them, I was seriously afraid of the dark. All right. And because of the love that I had for my grandfather, all fear, it's like I went against my nature to be afraid of the dark, to make sure that my grandfather's safe. I put on a raincoat and I went as a good distance to walk, and I went on the land in the rain, in the darkness, no street lights. In this is like as a forested area, all right, no street lights, and I walk in the midst of the land, and I keep calling, and nobody responding. I call and looking around. I can't see nothing, but the night, it's illuminated enough that you could see the trail, to walk. All right, there were trees, but the trees were more, to the outer extremity of the land. Had all the crops we have, and I was walking, and I was walking around. I was calling for him, and nobody was answering. In the dark, in the rain, and listen, 9 or 10 years old, I was terrified of the dark. But that evening, the dark wasn't an issue to me, just because I wanted to make sure that my grandfather was safe. All right. And when I looked around for a while, I gave up. I went home. I met him coming down the road looking for me, because my grandmother told him I went looking for him. All right. But as I said, the reason why, because I was thinking about this the other day, and the reason why I'm doing this lesson is because what would make you deny the Lord in the time of Jacob's trouble is fear. All right? Fear would make you deny the Lord. But if you truly love Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, fear goes out the door, because Yahweh Hashem Yahushai would be the main object of your love in that day, so that everything else is obsolete. All right? If you're afraid of dying, if you're afraid of being tortured, if you're afraid of pain, the love that you have for Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, all of that gonna be nothing to you. Just like it says that the 7 years that Jacob labored, the 14 years that Jacob labored for Rachel, it was like, weeks, because of the love he had for her. So it's nothing. Your mind just focus on the object of your love. And in the hour of martial law, if you love your family, if you love your life more than Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, fear gonna overwhelm you, and you're gonna deny the Lord. It's 1 John chapter 4 and verse 18. There is no fear in love, but perfect love. There is no fear in love. Just remember, I was 9 or 10 years old and terrified of the dark, but just to make sure that my grandfather, who I loved, was safe. The darkness wasn't nothing to me to brave. All right? There is no fear in love. All right? If you are afraid of snakes, I say a woman, you're afraid of snakes, you're afraid of frogs, you're afraid of spiders, you terrified, you get petrified on the sight of those things, and your child in danger, and the only thing between you and saving your child is your fear. Listen, those things that you fear gonna be nothing to you, because all you focus on is making sure your child is safe. So that fear gonna be nothing. It's only when you get back your child and you release your child safe, and then you think like, what the hell did I just do? Like, that is nothing I would normally do. All right? Because of love. Because of love. A man will put his life. A man will be a coward. A man will be a coward. He turned away from fights. He's been bullied all his life. The moment that man has somebody to protect, family or children, trust me, he gonna take up whatever weapon he could find and go outside to defend his family from an intruder. Even if you know that, guess what, the chances of him surviving real slim. Just to protect his family, he gonna do that. Because why? Because he loves his family. All right, that is why the scripture says there is no fear in love, but perfect love casteth out fear. Perfect love casteth out fear. Yahushua didn't want to go on the cross, but because of the love that he had for his Father and for the elect, Yahushua went through to say, thy will be done. So yes, being afraid ain't bad. It's what you do when you're afraid. If you're going to let that fear overwhelm you, or if you're going to let love for Yahweh Yahushua overwhelm you. Alright? It says perfect love casteth out fear. And get rid of that fear in that moment. Alright? It says because fear hath torment. It says he that feareth is not made perfect in love. So if you fear and if you turn away and you say, nah, I don't want to die. I don't want my family to be tortured. You know, my family have to eat. So I could just have to take the chip so that my family could survive. Guess what? Love is not perfected. And that is the reason why I just said what we're doing right now is the act of love. But the test of love cannot be in the time of Jacob's trouble. That is when you're going to see if you really love you. Guess what? It's real easy to say I love you about Shemya with all my heart, mind, body, and soul. But when the test comes, then you're going to be known who are the Lord's chosen. Who are the ones that truly love Yahweh Shemya. Just like the angel says, lovest thou these people more than him that made them? Now we're supposed to love Yahweh Shemya more. We're supposed to love the Lord more. This is the book of Luke 14 and 16. He says, then said he unto him, a certain man made a great supper and bade many. And he sent his servants at supper to say unto them that were bidden, come, for all things are made ready. And they all with one consent began to make excuse. The first said unto him, I have bought a piece of ground, I must needs go and see it. I pray thee, have me excuse. Another said, I have bought 5 yoke of oxen, I go to prove them. I pray thee, have me excused. Another said, I have married a wife, and therefore I cannot come. And all these men, these excuses that these men were making because they love this present life, as the scripture says, Demas had forsaken me, having loved this present life. They love this present life more than the glory of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, more than the workings of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. Alright? They love this life so much that they would give up everlasting life for it. They love their wives too much. They love their money too much. Alright? Imagine having, a large sum of money, in a bank account or multiple bank accounts. You was living good. And then they faced with this cashless system where they say, yeah, well, you're not going to be able to use cash anymore. You have to go completely digital, and to access that funds, you have to take the micro chip. If you love that money so much that you go and take that chip, guess what? You love this life more than Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. Alright? Verse 21, it says, so that servant came and shewed his Lord these things. Then the master of the house, being angry, said unto him, go out quickly unto the streets and lanes of the city, and bring in hither the poor and maimed and halt and the blind. Now, when you think of the poor, the halt, the maimed, the blind, all these people during that time, because you can't just think about it in these modern sense. When you read, when you're reading the scriptures, don't just read and then try to conclude the story. You have to pay attention to individual words. Alright? So now in these modern times, somebody might be crippled, wherever they have the whole family to take care of them. So they have the family, they love the family. But when you read the scripture, what did the Lord say? It says what? He says, go out quickly into the streets and lanes of the city. So these people had nothing. They were on the streets. They were homeless. They didn't have nobody to take care of them. They were the beggars that were on the streets, that were begging, all right, trying to make a life for themselves. They were the poor that didn't have nothing, probably went days without eating. All right. So these people, the only thing they could love is what is the idea of having that peace. So that is why the Lord looking for men who ready to give up everything and just seek Him. Because guess what? Paul said it in Philippians, I count all things but dung for the Lord. So he went into the streets to the people that were living on the streets. The people had nothing. The people who, as the scripture says in Timothy, let me read that real quick. I think, is it First Timothy? Let me make sure. Let me make sure. All right. So Second Timothy. Second Timothy chapter 2 and verse 4. As at verse 3, it says, Thou therefore endure hardness as a good soldier of Yahushua Mashiach. It says, No man that warreth entangleth himself with the affairs of this life. Don't entangle yourself with the affairs of this life, with the maimed, the halt, the blind, the poor that were in the streets. Those were homeless people, vagrants in these modern times. They didn't have nothing. So if the Lord said, hey, up and follow me, hey, so they go in one time. They ain't gonna say, Lord, let me just go and tell my wife, let me just go and tell my family. No, they're ready to roll with the Lord. All right. And when the hour of martial law come, guess what? What the scripture says, he that is forgiven more, love it more. So these people, they were so grateful that the Lord took them from that poor estate. They're ready to surrender their life for the Lord. For us who've been so wicked in our lives, forget the past lives. Think about our life in this time. The wickedness that we used to do. Seeing that Yahweh Shai gave his blood for us to live. All right? We'll be more than grateful to give up our life for the Lord Yahweh Shai. And that is what the Lord looking for. A few good men. All right? The creme de la creme. All right? The cream of the crop. All right? Not multitude, not quality, not quantity, but quality. That is what the Lord looking for when he calls us up. All right? And we can't entangle ourselves with this life. Or we're going to love this present life more than Yahweh Shai. And then when the hour of martial law comes, we're going to be afraid. We're going to be afraid of losing. That's why Paul said, I count all things dung. If you count all things dung, then guess what? You will lose everything for the Lord's sake. All right? You would lose everything willingly for the Lord Yahweh Shai's sake. This is the book of Revelation chapter 2 and verse 10. It says, Fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, that ye may be tried. That is the test of your love. We're doing the act of love right now, but then they're going to have the test of love. And ye shall have tribulation 10 days. Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give you a crown of life. That is the only person who could give you life. Yahweh Shai. Not your father, not your mother, not your wife, not your children. Alright? Not your money in your account. Because when this present world be destroyed, and the same family that you gave up salvation for die, because they're gonna die still, what you gonna do? All you're gonna be left with is your thoughts and regret. All you're gonna be left with is regret, because you did not truly love Yahweh Shai. You did not truly love Yahweh Shai. Alright, this is First Maccabees chapter 2. First Maccabees chapter 2 and start at verse 49. It says, Now when the time drew near that Mattathias should die, he said unto his sons, Now hath pride and rebuke gotten strength, and the time of destruction and wrath of indignation. Alright? Says, Now therefore, my sons, be zealous for the Lord, and give your lives for the covenant of your fathers. Give your lives for this truth. Strive for the truth unto death, and Yahweh shall fight for thee. Alright? It says, Call to remembrance the acts of our fathers. That's what our fathers did in their time. So shall you receive great honor and an everlasting name. Was not Abraham found faithful in temptation, and it was imputed unto him for righteousness? Joseph in the time of his distress kept the commandment and was made Lord over Egypt. Yeah, Joseph could have easily gone with Pharaoh's wife. Not Pharaoh's wife, the thing was Potiphar, or really the Egyptian wife. Alright? Phineas, our father, being zealous and fervent, obtained a covenant of an everlasting priesthood when he killed the man and the I think was the Midianite. I think it was a Midianite, the Midianite woman, right, with the javelin. Says Yahweh Shai, for fulfilling the words, he was made judge over Israel, like Joshua. Caleb, for bearing witness because before the congregation and receive the heritage of the land. David, for being merciful, possessed the throne of an everlasting kingdom. Elias, which is Elijah, for being zealous and fervent for the law, was taken up into heaven. Ananias, Azarias, and Mishael, these men could have easily saved their lives, saying, hey, I want to live, let me just do this and live. If I do this, I will live and I will be saved from the fiery furnace with 3 holy children, as you know them, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They could have easily saved their life, but for the love of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, they did not. Alright? They loved Yahweh Hashem Yahushai more than themselves, more than wife, more than... Guess what? They were for the Lord. That is how your mindset have to be. For the Lord, Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. If you love the Lord, truly love the Lord, guess what? All fear gonna be gone. You have to perfect your love in Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. You have to perfect your love in Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. Alright? This is the final precept here. This is Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 6. It says, so that we may boldly say. Can you boldly say that you love Yahweh Hashem Yahushai and that you will give your life up no matter what? Alright? That is the state of mind that we have, that is the state we have to be in. Alright? It says, so that we may boldly say that Yahweh Hashem Yahushai is my helper, and I will not fear what man shall do unto me. Alright? We're not going to fear, because our love is greater in Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. So we have to perfect our love for the Lord. Alright? So with that, I hope it was edifying. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. I want to give double honor to the apostles of greatness who do well. Salutation to the men of the hope and saints elect. This is Brother Marcus out in Trinidad saying Shalom and stay strong. Shalom.